The Death Star, and I'm basically done with it. I finished scraping off most of the basically the panel lines that I could find that needed to be, and finished touching up a little paintings. There's a few different grays, just a little bit here and there, just to make it just a tad bit different, than just a solid gray, one two-color paint scheme. The dish here's got different colors. Basically two different grays that I used. Very light, very subtle. I know it's hard to look at it contrast. It's because you got the light gray and the darker gray, which is it's subtle on the I call it the in-between grays. But anyway, there you have it. Very fun. I'll have to pick up the planetarium and get one. I think that's an excellent size, especially even I think it blows away the Ertl kit for detail wise. But anyway, very fun. And so we're gonna do the final look-see over here, so we make sure that we got everything, as this will be off the bench and on its way to its original home. Very fun. I will have to find one, especially since Rogue One came out. I assume Death Stars will probably pop up on a few places. But anyway, Uncle Milton. That's the company that you got to remember. One thing I got to mention on some of the grays, and you'll see it. There will be some knife marks, as in when I cut the tape. So we're just going to say that's panel lines. I touched up best I could. If you need to touch up on the grays, all you got to do is get your primer or whatever paint that you used, and get you like a palette, and spray your primer or your base coat in here, and it's basically brush ready. And then you take your brush and in your palette, and you can go in and touch up the gray if you need to. I touched up best I could. I was getting more of a I'm not an exact match on the enamel. Light gray here, but I got pretty close. So if you need to touch up more, that's about the way to do it. But anyway, very fun build, and I want to seal this off, and I'll shoot you an email, and then I'll have it let it sit for a day, and I'll have it wrapped up and ready to go. So we're finishing up the Death Star. Let me get it over here. The Impala. So what I've done so far is I've got the basically styrene strip for the trim there, and I'm not a let me explain first before I put it down. Got the strip on. You can see the glue super glue marks on there, which I'll explain that in just a minute. I went ahead and painted the trim, and I used good old-fashioned tester silver. It was just quick and easier, and I think it more durable than the acrylic one that I used. Painted the door handles, both sides, got left and right, and then I want to work on the paint the trim on the window here and the sides here. I'll try to do that this week. But anyway, you can see the glue stains. It's not a big deal because I want to put a clear coat over it, and it'll blend in. But anyway, I hate to say it, but I'm not a big fan of the Super T. It's all right. I mean, I like it because of the bottle. God, where is it? I had to go back and I had to go buy some at the hobby store, but the people that make Accelerated, that make super glue, they got a thick one that I like. This is kind of a thin. I think it said gap filling. Yeah, I wouldn't really call it that. One in the purple bottle that you ever see on my table, I probably don't have any. I think I used it all. That's the super glue of my choice, so I got that stashed away at a hobby store, and I got a bunch on layaway so I wouldn't run out. But anyway, not bad. I'm going to try to use this up before I get my super glue out of the layaway at the hobby store. But anyway, the Impala is taking shape. I just got to do a little more trim painting, and then we're ready to spray some Future on, and that'll be ready to go. And then I got to paint the rims. I got just not enough hours in the day to do all the fun stuff. The MBT, I did get the torpedo on, and I actually had to go and buy. I was trying to find there's an old 70s bomber kit that had a torpedo, and I was trying to get it, and I didn't know if I had one. I looked in the Ark itself, and I'd have to do some digging. So what I did is, well, there's my battery snap. Oh, that's hooked up. We'll go to that in a minute. This was at the hobby store. It was buried in the shelves of the hobby store. I think it ain't been touched in like 7 or 8 years. I guess no one wanted it, but anyway, I bought it because it had the torpedo, which I needed, and it's a World War II torpedo, but for the MBT, that's close enough. It's going to be underneath. You really can't see it, but anyway, bombs are alright. You always use ordnance, but you do get a tractor, and it's 1/48 scale, which hey, that's pretty much standard here at the hacienda. But anyway, I got the torpedo. That's the only thing I took out, so the rest of the kit's intact. But anyway, I got the torpedo assembled and glued on. So there you go on that. I just got to do a little back of the knife and scribe the seam on the side, and then a couple coats of heavy primer, and I'll be ready to go. I got to rig it, which I was going to do later today, but the cat was sitting on my lap, and I pretty much just sat there and didn't do anything. But anyway, one thing I got to mention on the MBT. See, you got the little rear landing skid. Once you put it down, though, it's going to rest on the torpedo, which I really can't help that. I mean, basically all I could do would be to cut the fin off, and it might sit. But anyway, that's we're going to have to say that is close enough for government work. I really can't get it any I can't really modify it anymore. It gives the effect of the torpedo. That's what we're after. We're not 100% dead nut accurate, but it is close enough. So anyway, there's that. I want to try to rig it, and then I think what I want to do after that is I'll post shade it, and I'll do my silver gray on. Is what I'm planning on doing, and then we can pretty much get that painted. I'm going to try to paint it during Christmas week. If not, I'll probably paint it Christmas Day. I don't know why it is, but Christmas Days just seem like you paint a whole lot for some reason. But anyway, hopefully that'll work out, but I ain't guaranteeing it, but that's the game plan anyway. But anyway, got the torpedo on. It looks pretty darn slick with it on. And yes, I have been flying it around with the torpedo bomber, but I do that with starships too. Gran Torino ain't done nothing. Of course, that's a broken record, but I'll get the trim on hopefully this week. But I gotta get the bench clean, and I gotta get this thing shipped before I can really touch it. I've been just been busy. The Nissan GTR. I got the. Last I left off, I did get the little brake pads and the wheels assembled. I got it through the, I guess, the axle here that goes through it. Got that on. You get these little springs for the little leaf springs, and I've already lost one, so I had to go through the vape box and get some Kanthal wire, and I re-wrapped it, and I made a spring that I lost. If you can see it behind the tire, there's one that's on without the tire, and then if you can see one, come on, focus. There's one behind the tire, and there you go, wrapped up coil. That was pretty easy, and the Kanthal wire, I think also, it's just thick enough and thin enough where you could even make whip antennas and all that good stuff. One of the cool things about the vaping store there. But anyway, I did get one of the wheels on because I wanted to test fit it. It's it's basically you get a poly cap, rim fits in there, and then it fits on. You can actually pull it on and off. I got to mention one thing on the car: you will not be able to move the tires. I actually, it's got a clip here that goes on top, and it clips. You can see right there that clips on to like right here. I'm not a big fan. I think you're supposed to have like maybe tension on the tire. It doesn't snap or anything. It's real loose, so I tacked them in place. They're glued on, and the rear ones will be glued. You can't roll the car anyway, and you won't be able to move the tires. That's the only thing. I hated to do it, but you know, I don't like moving parts on a model. It's just more of a hassle when you ship it, and it should be a-okay. But they are straight, so that's all that matters. So after I get the front tires on, then we'll work on the getting the back on in the next video. The Crazy Horse, and if you can see on the pile, the decal pile is gone. I even swept somewhat of the floor because I even had decal paper on there. I was just a cutting decal paper machine. But I did get all the decals on, and I had to break out Mr. Solve set here, and I had to put it on the what's it called, the phaser banks. And I actually took snips, and I think they're too big because they're just too big for the decals to conform to. So I clipped off them, and it should give them the little raised bumps underneath the decal once it dries and once it sucks to it. But anyway, I had to break that out. But I got all the decals on, got the last of the registry numbers. I never do the inside of it. I know technically it's Canon, you know, it's correct if you do. I like to do, I think it looks cool, just one on each side. It's kind of a little trademark of mine. You kind of also know, you know, if someone painted the exact same thing you did, you got a little cheating decal there that, you know, that you put on, and rivet counters get a little mad when you don't put some decals on. But anyway, got all the decals on, and I'm just waiting for the solve set to dry, and then I'm going to shoot it all with the clear and ready to go. And it still works. So we'll do a little walk around. Oh, come on now. Come on. There we go. I got everything working and lit, and I'll talk about that in the next one, but we are good to go. One thing I will have to mention here, and I'll mention it later once it's dry and got a clear on it and I can touch it. It will not be on one of my dome stands that I usually do. It's a bigger tube, and it's actually going to be more wobbly. Basically using a telescoping tube. It's actually going to be more wobbly if I put it on the stand there. So what I recommend is basically get you a wood base, and just enough for the you can you know, prop it up just enough with some I want to say pegs, but that ain't right. Little, you know, feet that you can buy at the hardware store, just enough to hide the battery. Drill you a hole for the pole here, put it on. You can stain it, paint it, whatever you want, and you got run the wires through. You got your 9-volt, and you can shove it back in there if you need to, and you're good to go. That's about the only thing. I won't be able to do the stand on this one, and I got about 6 more Starships to build, and there probably will not be no stands on those. The big polar light stands, they do work if you weren't lighting them, but they don't work when you do light them, because the way my method of using the brass tube. But anyway, that's what I've got going on today. I will have a shed update, because I did it before the Arctic cold blast blew through here and made everything -12. So I'll have that later today. But anyway, that's what I got going on today. I am done with the decals on the Crazy Horse. Finishing up the Rogue One Death Star, adding the torpedo to the MBT, and we're doing some trim work on the Supernatural Impala. So that's what I got going on today, so stay tuned for the next exciting episode.